So somebody again is asking here, Mr. Chairman, that many African nations such as Somalia, Zambia, Mozambique, Burkina Faso, Mali, and all the Sahel nations that we've mentioned, Democratic Republic of Congo, have seen a national debt spiral due to dependency on this foreign aid or loan packages. So he wants to know, do you think that debt crisis faced by these African countries, well, it's a direct question which you've answered in many ways, or do you think that the debt crisis faced by many African countries today is direct consequence of neo-colonial aid strategies? How can African leaders truly break free from this economic trap? I think the last part, you've answered the first part and then the last part, but if you can still throw more light, however you choose to handle that, I will appreciate that.
Thank you. And I want to thank the guests too equally for that question. That's a very good question, equally. I would say, yes, the debt trap is actually really planned out by the hegemon, by the neo-colonialists. If you look at the way that even their society is set up, when we started this conversation, when we started this discussion, we did mention the whole aspect of that used to previously exist between slave and master, and the control of the entire economic system by a few groups of individuals that are calling on the shots and determining the agenda for the entire for most of the populations of humanity. It's just now that a lot of other countries are breaking free, especially countries in the Asian continent. Most of Africa and Southern America is still held under the yoke of the hegemon. Now, going to your question, if you look at the way that their society is even set up, if you take myself, for example, and many of you watching who live in the United States, you earn an income, the income, you pay an income tax, and then everything that you purchase from when you go to the store, you still pay the sales tax. And when you make any kind of bill payment, you purchase a car, you purchase a home, you're being taxed double on that is, you're being taxed on income that has already been taxed. So at the end of the day, the whole objective is to give you very little and reliant on just basically trying to catch up on the next job, so that way you can make the next payment. So when you live in a situation like that, you have very little time to focus on anything else, because at the end of the day, every day you're just trying to meet the obligations that come with making those payments, because you're getting the minimum. Now, against that background, if you go to the level of the country, if you look at the way that the country has been set up, the countries are meant to be given, not just because they're given those levels of indebtedness, so they can now, they can't really focus on the development of their own country. They can focus on reallocating resources towards building hospitals, so at the end of the day, they are only getting that money to pay for principals and interest. So that growth never happens. The country remains poor and wretched. And then when a country is poor, wretched, and doesn't have the resources, it continues to rely on the hegemon. And when you are relying on somebody, then basically that person always tells you what to do. Your resources, they come in, they say, if you need this loan, then you give us control of this. Then they control your economy, and they always take. So that is basically the basis of it. Now, a lot has been happening. I think that I would say that we should be all excited that we're living in this moment in time in the history of humanity. The reason being that after the Second World War, you had one pole, the United States emerged as the sole standing guy on the block. China was basically manufacturing pencils, HB pencils. That was it. Japan had just equally emerged from war. You remember the Hiroshima event, the Nagasaki event. I'm not going to the details of that. So basically, Europe had been destroyed completely from the Second War. So the United States was the only guy standing on the block, and they called the shots, they did everything. So gradually, towards the 70s, 80s, you come to a very huge, massive competition between the Russians, which were the primary country that defeated Hitler in this case, so they remain standing, especially from a scientific basis, advancements in science. So they had to continue to have a very strong military. They were the individuals that were sending people to space and the moon, and they equally, at some point, even all the way through to today, they were the ones that were providing transportation for NASA's astronauts to go to space. So the United States had not been able to develop that transportation mechanism. So that's just to say how Russia gradually emerged as a very strong pole. And then today you're having gradually the Chinese equally have set up a base in which they stayed quietly and they grew to where they are now. Their navy they have more ships in their navy arsenal than the US. Now they have a strong military of, I think they have a standing army of over 2 million individuals, and so on and so forth. Let's get to your question. So you have these different nodes or these different power centers that have now come to the realization that for everyone to be able to make progress, there has to be a change. One of the ways that the hegemon has been able to control the rest of the world has been through the United Nations. They have spelled out this whole idea of rules-based order. So long as it is favoring them, they bring it out that you have to push for democracy, you have to push for human rights, and they use that as an excuse to attack Libya, to attack Iraq, to attack to kill all these other countries.
Right.
So you're having a situation now that, I'm answering the second part of your question, which is basically what can we really do about it? How can we address this situation?
Right.
China has partnered as an anchor with Russia because basically they understand that they are the two really solid countries that can go against anyone else in this world, and not just through partnership. Right now, the Russian army has become so strong to the extent that I actually personally, this is a personal opinion, think that they're even more powerful than the United States Army. The United States Army historically was very strong. But Russia, the war has forced them to advance in their technology, to advance in so many aspects, military aspects, that not to Russia in this case. So they've partnered together. China and Russia have partnered to create this other structure, this other pole, in which gradually they are now allowing other countries. The reason that the countries in the Sahel are able to stand against the hegemon in our conversation is partly because they now have, especially the Russian military, through previously Wagner, but now Wagner has become a part of the Russian government military itself. So that is providing a lot of this the military base, the strength for which these countries in the Sahel militarily are standing on. Otherwise, the French would have just come in and maybe bombed them and bombed the whole place together. But they cannot do that because they would have to kill Russian forces, and they kill Russian forces. So that's one of the ways. The other way is that Chinese have created this international Asian International Bank, I think for short, in which countries that are now under sanction could have only had the option to go to the World Bank and the IMF, now have other options. They could go to this and borrow money for much favorable rates and with no conditions attached.
Right.
The IMF or the World Bank will come in with the structural adjustment programs that basically tells you, like we talked about earlier. But this international bank will basically look for capacity to pay. If you are funding the construction of a power system, let's say, for example, a dam, then they'll provide you the money for the dam, knowing that the electricity bills will then pay towards. So that is what is looked at, the capacity to pay. They don't care about intervene. So this is another method in which this is working towards circumventing that structure. There are many others that we can talk about. But I would like to note that before we go to the next question, I would like to note that the hegemon is actually reacting to that as well. And what they've done is they've tried to expand their military presence. They've gone to countries like Zambia and told them that we can provide you with security. Meanwhile, Zambia is not under any threat from anyone, but we can provide you with security by creating a NATO office here. So basically, by creating all these military bases that They've now put one in Ghana, Senegal. They're now very recently they're constructing a new military base in Ivory Coast. So the whole essence is to basically create a situation where they block the access to raw materials or access to economic flow of the Chinese into these countries of the South by choking China's shipping and distributions of goods that are coming from, because China's economy is mostly driven by manufacturing coming from China. So, but we can have many of these detailed conversation can go
exactly because you have so much to give out here. You have so much, and I can bet you those in the comment section or those who will be listening afterward will so much appreciate this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, like you if you're just joining us, we are discussing the shadows of the past, neocolonialism in the 21st century. And if you've not yet hit that subscribe button, kindly hit that subscribe button and also the join button beside the subscribe button, and also like, share your thoughts in the comment section. Let us have it as an interactive session.